Very good afternoon to all of you, ladies and gentlemen, joining us to be a part of this very interesting conversation and discussion that I'm going to have today with Rakesh. And, of course, Rakesh is the vice chairman of Bharti Enterprises, but also the chairman of Del Monte Foods, Bharti AXA Life Insurance, and on many other boards of the group. And I think, therefore, Rakesh, you're the perfect person, really, because you have such a diversified interest in both India and India going global. It's so critical and important for your thoughts on how will really India Inc. evolve over the next 25 years, and really how do you see that shaping up the future not only of India as a country, but our role in the world as we emerge over this Amrit Kal, as our Prime Minister likes to call
Right. Um, so let me start on a lighter note. I think the backdrop 75 needs to be dropped and 100 to be brought in. This is something which should have happened. I know while the agenda is being shaped, but clearly we are on the journey of India at 100 now. So that's on a lighter note. And I don't know how many people have joined the chat, but I am a product. I would say not me, but Bharti is a product of post-liberalization policies of 1991. And we have seen how India has evolved from a very, very strong, restrictive, prohibitive license Raj, in the 80s, 70s, 80s, until the end of 90s, when the liberalization came in. And today we see a stronger, resilient India, the third largest startup ecosystem in the world, amongst the top 5 economies globally. And I think more importantly, while when we looked at 1991 onwards, India took a different path of going on the services side, and therefore the manufacturing and agriculture's contribution to GDP came down over time. Having said that, and I'm not saying that the services sector didn't do a good job. I think they did a hell of a job, an excellent job to ensure creating employment and also exports of services, offshoring or onshoring onto India. The software industry, the IT industry played a very, very big role. Honestly, hand on heart, I would have not thought of that India will one day see the revival of manufacturing sector. And I must, give this to Prime Minister Modi on his vision of getting into the incentivization through the performance-linked incentive schemes. And one of the success which we have seen is on the mobile phone manufacturing. Today we have in excess of 150 manufacturing units, and they're not only manufacturing, I think also launching the latest designs and exporting to the world. So there is now a huge focus on various sectors: electronics, telecom, food processing, and many other sectors which are being added to. One of the other things which I have also seen during the past 2 decades, our focus and deep involvement in developing products, be it the pharma sector, be it the auto sector. And very recently, we see the space sector, which was recently open to the private players. We just saw 2 of the young, if I may say, ex-ISRO employees who got together and assembled a complete Indian rocket, which was fired by ISRO. I think these are not only success stories, but it also gives us confidence in our own capabilities. And more importantly, delivering products at affordable prices. I think that is something which India is bringing onto the global table, if I may say, that we are cost conscious. We also want to see affordability so that the consumers can afford those products or the services, if I may say. I mean, telecom is a classic case. Even today, at whatever the tariffs are, it's the cheapest in the world. The last point I want to make here is on the transformation which has taken across the India Inc. If you see today, there are a large number of corporate players who are responsible citizens. So it's not only the product services they sell or the profitability which they look at, it is also sustainability with profitability. Huge focus on transparency and governance. And if I may say, one of the other factors which I clearly see, more and more focus on the employees, your own family members who work within your organizations. So we are clearly investing in our people. We are clearly investing in innovating new technologies, startup ecosystem. And as a responsible citizen, if we see every year now, corporate India spends about 20,000 crores on CSR. I think that is something which also makes sure that we are looking at inclusive growth.
No, I think all very, very valid, true India points, especially driving this price performance curve. I think no country really does it better than India, and what you have done in telecom is a global example of mass value, affordable value solutions, and tremendous performance. But Rakesh, to your point on the India at 75 and why that's still in the backdrop, we are, as you've been the CII president, you've been involved with CII, you've been so integral to the India at 75 agenda. I want to also just take it out for our audiences because this is live streaming on many other platforms as well. That CII took on this agenda of India at 75 when we were celebrating India at 60. And of course, the then Chief Minister of Gujarat and Honorable Prime Minister today, did, speak at a 3-hour meeting with us and said that when we come to Delhi, we will make large parts of this vision come true at a government level. And today, we are sitting celebrating the Amrit Mahotsav, as a part of India at 75. And the celebrations, continue until August of this year, Rakesh, given that we lost some time with COVID. So one of the exercises that we are doing as India at 75 is not only celebrating what we've achieved in all of these 75 years of independence, but also have conversations like this and see what we can do to accelerate, our growth and our position and the inclusive agenda of India over the next 25 years. So the India at 100 is still today an integral part of this. And at the right time, what you said, it will move into execution mode. We are, building voices, understanding ground up, level of depth in terms of what are the prioritized issues and how can we address them, together. You have been very passionate, through when I look at your bio, and I know you, of course, over all these years, whenever we speak, you're so passionate about education. You, as your foundation, you operate, I think 173 Satya Bharti schools, support over 800 plus government schools, looked at it from many, many angles of holistic education and others. So when we talk, Rakesh, about paving the way for an innovative, sustainable, inclusive India at 100, really, what are those priority sectors, right? Like, especially we start with education and maybe one or two other sectors, that you think we need to build focus on. And if we have to build a focus, really, how do we make that, agenda inclusive? Because, any change in India, we see in pockets of excellence is not really, the India that, will get us where we need to be by India at 100. But, building about both scale and depth, how do we really go about doing that? So it'd be great to get your thoughts on that.
Sure, Rajan. I think you rightly termed my passion on the education side, and this is something which we realized way back, in the late 90s, when we were still a young, if I may say, young bud, sort of trying to find our feet. But we were very, very clear from day one that if we have to make a difference in the economic growth of India, partake in the economic growth of India, then there has to be something which needs to drive us also. And there is an old adage, we've been hearing this about in our school time, during our school time, to make a buck. And everyone talks about that. And Bharti DNA, I mean, we in the very early years, in the 90s, we decided that we will change this paradigm from to make a buck to actually to make a buck to make a difference. So that is the core DNA of Bharti. And 2000, we set up the Bharti Foundation. While right from the early years when we started businesses, we were supporting scholarships, Bharti scholarships in engineering and management institutes. But then we decided to pick up one sector, and education was something which was the dire need of the country as a whole. More importantly, the students who come from disadvantaged segments of society. And therefore, Bharti Foundation was set up with a vision, to ensure the young population of India, to enable them to realize and pursue their dreams. And I believe if India has to be amongst the top 3 economies, which is in very, it's not very far off. I mean, it's going to happen during our lifetimes. That is one thing which I'm really, really excited about. In that case, we have to make sure that our young generations are not only educated, but they are educated with a strong value system. And one of the things which pains me, and I've been witnessing this for the last decade and a half or 2, we have all focused, and when I say we, it starts from the parents, the teachers, the society, and the entire governance system, if I may say. We have all focused on education, educating our child, and we forgot that a strong value system is equally important to make them humane in their approach. And that is a time when we decided to set up the Satya Bharti schools. And this came in the year 2006, when Prime Minister Manmohan Singh inaugurated the Bharti School of Telecom Technology and Management at IIT Delhi. Prior to that, we were predominantly supporting the higher education, as I mentioned earlier. And as we speak today, in addition to the Bharti School, we are the founders, one of the founder supporters of ISB Mohali campus with Bharti Institute of Public Policy, which has the Fletcher School of Diplomacy, Tufts University as our partner. We set up the Bharti Center for Telecom Research at IIT Mumbai. And the latest venture is the Plaksha University in Mohali, which is a science-led engineering courses. So coming back to my schools first, because that's what you mentioned. So Dr. Singh, gave a clarion call to corporate India to get into primary education. And we said we'll soon do something. In 2006, we started our journey. And as we see today, we have 173 village schools. So all my schools are in villages because of our vision of going and touching the last child standing in the rural hinterland of India. We all know, even in the cities, the teachers are absent in the government schools. You sort of flip the coin and go into the rural areas, teachers are not there. And if the teachers are in schools, there is no education happening. While I believe with the right to education, the enrollment in government schools have gone up significantly, 70% plus. In fact, the latest ASER report, which was launched only yesterday, talks about that. It's in the newspapers today. But there is no worthwhile education or changing lives, if I may say. Therefore, we went into villages. Today, there are 40,000 boys and girls in the Satya Bharti schools, 173, Punjab, Haryana, Rajasthan, UP, and Tamil Nadu. We were in West Bengal also. We just got out of the West Bengal last year. And the idea is now to more and more focus on the quality support program in government schools. Because, you're aware of that every village, every small taluka has government school. And my push was, why, you want us to keep on putting more on CapEx? I would rather spend that money in educating children. And today we have 800 plus quality support program in the government schools. So Bharti Foundation currently is in 16 states. We touch 350,000 students every morning in one way or the other. And QSP at scale, where we have started working with the state governments. This year, we've already crossed 1 million children through our direct and indirect interventions. And when I say indirect, it is, for example, a bagless day, no bag day, 1 day a week. While the NEP talks about 12 times a month, we are trying to see if we can do it 1 time once a week, which means 4 times. And that is something which is in play. And also life skill of, for the students through the club system. I was surprised that government schools have no clubs. Private schools do have, but government schools don't have it. Government schools have the best of equipment, but not being used. So when we went into the schools, we set up the computer labs, the science labs, the libraries, the co-curricular activities, public speaking. So we do everything around education, but for getting into the education. That has resulted in that the students don't want to go back home, and they're forcing the teachers to be present in schools. And therefore, education is also happening, and we see a significant shift in the learning levels. So coming back to, I believe today we are at the cusp. Actually, we have lost a lot of time, if I may say, but the sooner we realize, there needs to be serious industry academia engagement on the higher education side. And why I'm saying so, today, if you see the faculty is happy teaching what they have been teaching for the last 20, 30 years. Students are okay because those are the only courses which are being made available. And hence, when we see the outcome after 4 years or 3 years of graduation, there are only 29% employable and 71% are not even employable, and you have to train and retrain them. The world is moved from jobs in future to future of jobs, while we are still stuck in the old, rigmarole of jobs in future. And I believe that the engineering courses need a complete refurbish. We need to look at future technologies. The programs and courses need to be on artificial intelligence, IoT, machine learning, augmented virtual reality, robotics, computer sciences, and clubbed with that, the life sciences or the biosciences, if I may say. Because these lines of, clear distinction of arts, commerce, science, they're all blurring, they're all coming together. And therefore, it is a great need for academics to understand that their engagement with industry cannot just be summer internships, and finally, at the end of the course, job placements. We need to sit together on revising the curriculum. We need to sit together on research and development in a very, very transparent manner. We need to look at how the industry senior leadership can be part of the teaching, if I may say. And therefore, there is a lot of work which needs to be done. NEP has addressed that to a large extent, which is yet to be implemented. But ultimately, there's always a policy and implementation. And we go wrong at the implementation stage. And I'm again re-emphasizing, it is the responsibility of corporate India, equally with the governments, to make sure that we make a significant shift in the higher education sector. The second one big thing which India has shown is the technology and ubiquitous access of data. We see digital stacks, we see Aadhaar, we see the Jandhan account, we see the largest transaction on the UPI online payment platform. So clearly, we are now showcasing the world that on the new technologies adoption, implementation, and usage, India can take leadership. I have the opportunity to have discussed with many African leaders, the presidents or prime ministers. They are interested in unique idea and how can we look at an Aadhaar-based platform, not only for our country, can it cut across 54 countries of Africa, like the Indian continent? So these are good things to hear. And I believe this is where India, during its G20 leadership this year, can not only showcase, but also look at prominent partnerships in sharing this with the world. I think the more we share, the more better the world will become. So that is the other area which I believe. The technology sector or the services sector is talking of, going up to 1 trillion contribution in the GDP out of the 5, and therefore this is something which we need to look at a greater push. I've already talked about the manufacturing briefly earlier. But one point which I would like to say here is, given the China-US conflict, in the Russia-Ukraine war, clearly there is a lot of turmoil in the supply chains, in the availability of raw material, in the scarcity of food, energy. So there are different kind of crises in different parts of the world. The world is talking of China plus one strategy. It could be China plus one, it could be China plus two, but they are clearly looking at hedging their bets out of China into another nation. And my belief is India is in a sweet spot to be that China plus one. And I think it is on the governments to not only put their best foot forward in showcasing the different regulatory policies, ease of doing business, ease of living, if I may say. These are the factors which is going to attract large private investments into India on supply chain and logistics. And by the way, the moment we look at that, the Indian industry gets a huge fillip because these supply chains are being set for global requirements. And therefore, your products, your services can be exported to rest of the world. So I would say these are the key. I mean, there are many other areas which we can focus on. Healthcare is, for example, the other area which needs to be brought to the level of the common man. And that is where I think it is more the government is playing a larger role. Can the private healthcare sector, healthcare service providers, also look at being a part of that journey? Because honestly, Rajan, I believe, and I have been a very strong proponent of this. We can't be at peace if there is turmoil around us, if there is poverty around us, if there are people who go hungry or who don't have access to basic utilities. So you can't have islands of happiness or islands of wealth. The ecosystem around must be uplifted, and that is where private sector, corporate India must play a very big role.
I think you've highlighted so many critical priorities for India, and I think the last point that you just talked about, right? Government plus industry, and in some cases academia involved, and their whole innovation ecosystem all need to really work together, right? If you see Bharti's example, while you're doing 1,000 government schools, I mean, the need for India is much larger, right? And you're absolutely right that that's the way it can happen. The narrative over the next 25 years, it's not a China plus, it's an India plus what? If
True.
we can change the narrative for the world like that. But all of this, Rakesh, will need India, I mean, our private sector, industry, to really work in through trust mechanism, really rely on each other, still respect the democratic values of a country, and still get that to happen. I mean, you've been involved over all these years in so many such conversations, and I've personally been part of many of the conversations that you have led and we've had. Where and how do you see us cracking that particular piece? Because the moment we unlock that, I think all the things that we're talking of, right, even our leadership in technology and everything else, can just be opened up to a different level and scale. And of course, this is across states, it's across governments at the center, even somewhere in local governments, because you operate across governments at all levels and the bureaucracy. So how do we really make it? Is there a secret sauce?
Actually, not. Actually, there is no secret sauce in this. It is, if I may say, we have to look within ourselves to find the right mix to see how this works. You talked about trust. The matter of fact is the trust deficit is only widening between the government and the private sector, between civil society, private sector, between the civil society and the government. So clearly, this is not a very good thing. It seems to be a broken system, but thankfully, India, with its all its diversity, we have the knack of still staying together and looking at the nation as one. I'm not getting into what the states have their own priorities and agendas. The matter of fact is, and I have no hesitation in saying this. I don't know whether this is is there media on this today?
No media, but it is, yeah, but it is public. Yeah. This session will be public.
Yeah. So, the only point which I want to make here is that the private sector also gives enough reason to the government for not having trust in us. And this is something which need to change. And when I say we need to look within, this is what we need to, talk about. And this clearly, I see more and more things happening. And I go back to my, on the education piece which I started. We need to focus on building a strong value system. We need to build a strong moral society. That is something which we need to focus on. It will take time. Since we have lost so much of time and we see the result today, it will take time. But clearly, if I see, the governments have gone into making their processes and policies to a very large extent transparent. You see all the subsidies now, majority of them, maybe not all. I don't have the complete knowledge, but majority of them are now through direct benefit transfer. So the beneficiaries are getting the money directly into their bank accounts, which is a good thing. And I believe that more and more subsidies should go into the name of the lady of the house or the women, because that is where the money gets utilized effectively, more effectively, if I may say. So I think both the governments, I would say all stakeholders, need to work together in ensuring that this trust deficit comes down, it reduces. The government must see private sector as a partner. And that can be in healthcare services, in education, in agriculture, and many other areas. The private sector has demonstrated, huge efficiencies in delivery, whether it is the products or services. And that is where the government agencies tend to falter. And therefore the costs go up. There are wastages which happen. And ultimately, we as a nation have to suffer because it is a cost to every citizen when we look at, for example, the wastages in the farm sector is huge. So therefore, I would say that government must invite industry and talk to them and see them as a partner. The industry must see government as a catalyst, as an enabler of putting the right policies, processes in place. And it's our job to comply with every regulation or every regulatory regime, regulatory laws, if I may say. That will bring the trust deficit gap lower, and more trust will be in each other. We have seen this happening all over the world. And I see no reason why in India we can't do that. The second thing which you talked about is, I believe every citizen, however, in whatever category you sit in today, has the responsibility to contribute in their own way by giving time, by giving money, by sharing ideas, working as groups, to see how things can improve within societies we live in, within the communities we live in. Today, we are more self-centric. I think a community connect need to develop. State governments need to see the private sector as partners. The state government, the central governments need to see each other as a partner towards the growth of India. So all this, I believe, can help us in making sure that we look at better employment opportunities for all, better inclusive growth. And in that, I also believe the MSME sector is one sector which can play a huge role. We have seen during the pandemic, ultimately, there was stress, there was loss of jobs, but everyone pitched in to support their own employees. So clearly, that is something which the industry does. Majority of us support our domestic staff by education of of their children or their health, all those things. So if we start doing these small things, this can result into a much bigger outcome, much better India, much happier India. So I would say that is something for all the stakeholders to put their minds together. We just don't need to be seen as the third largest economy, but we need to be also seen as the leaders globally on keeping sure that we take care of every Indian citizen. Their basic needs are met with housing, water, power, toilets, food. So today it's not just roti, kapda, and makan. Today there are many things which are basic necessities. And that is where, if we can contribute in any which way, that will help us in building a very, very strong and a better India.
No, I think you've raised so many very critical points in these last set of comments, Rakesh. I think, particularly, I think when you talk of how do we ensure each of us that the entire country moves along, in terms of development, means we are all a partner in the development growth. And I think one theme, that has emerged across a lot of conversations with senior corporate leadership and others is that India's role in the world in the future is not really going to be one of a superpower like the way we see today, but more like a super partner to the world to ensure and see how we can actually drive outcomes for different sets of countries, in different ways, rather than, just make it an India way. And this is our thousands of years of culture and history, the whole Vasudev Kutumbakam, you're talking of, the G20 being a thought, that, we are an integral part of shaping the future development. And I think the first place to start that is at home. And, as India at 75, you're aware, the national volunteer grid, how do we give time, skills, or money, small pieces of that, but really build a movement around that could be one great way for us to see more progress. With the government, we built the MyGov platform, which is a platform that enables people to step out there to contribute. But I think that whole exercise and effort probably needs to be scaled up. But your last point, is which you raised at the initial part of these comments really struck me, is that how do we change society to become more moralistic? And I think, the focus on children, it will take a generation, right? And that's the place we can really influence that, because I think by the time you reach a particular age, you're so set in your behavioral pattern that, the change is probably incremental. But if we want to bring about a massive societal change on the way we look at a model, trusting society, I think that investment in children has to be today and it has to be now. And I would love to, reach out to you along this exercise of India at 100, particularly around this theme, because it's a very unique perspective, Rakesh, that you brought. But one I think truly believe is so important, and critical, for us as we move forward. One other area, because we've not touched about it, and I know you're passionate is about the other larger India, rural India, the whole agricultural sector, and how, can we build national capacity to maintain food security partnerships in many of those areas, which are also critical, in a very different context, right? You said there are a lot of wastages, there's a lot of that. But again, some thoughts around you, because you work deeply in those spaces. What could be some steps? Maybe 25 years is a marathon. But if we are saying in this next 100-meter sprint, right, India at 100 is starting, we're getting in the next year, what can we do? What could be the right steps for us to take somewhere in that sector as well?
So I would say, on agriculture, primarily on the primary agriculture, let me address that first. While we see we are the second largest growers of rice and wheat in the world, we are the largest milk producer in the world, we are the second largest on pulses, and so on and so forth. The list goes on. But the moment you compare the yield per hectare with the global yields, we are laggards. And the problem lies in the basic way the primary agriculture is set up today. The farmer, Indian farmer, has an average land holding of a hectare, which is about 2.2 acres. Now, on a 2.2 acre land, you just do not have the wherewithal to put technology on that 2 acre land. And the technology is mechanization, more machines rather than manual labor. While we have moved to a lot of mechanization, but that still is a far cry from what we need to make sure that the farmer's income improves significantly. And there are many ways, and I personally was leading the agri policy advocacy at CII for a very, very long time. And unfortunately, we have now stuck up in the the farm laws, the way things stand today. And I'm a bit I would say disappointed that the dialogue is not happening, because ultimately we need to see, while the India of 60s 70s, when we went out to the world with a begging bowl, to the green revolution, which currently continues by seeing that we can sustain our food requirements of our Indian population. As a matter of fact, when we talk of food security of the world, India has 1/6 population of global population. So when we are feeding our own population and have surplus foods in the storages, clearly we are also in a way helping to tackle food security in the world. So that's the one positive, which I must say. But if we look at the various cropping patterns across the country and we try to pick up the best practices and implement them, the experts say that our productivity can go up by 1.5 to 2x, which means that whatever we are producing today, we can up the ante. The problem which sits out there is the farmers are not moving to high value crops. Until they do that, their farm incomes will always remain very, very small, and it becomes extremely difficult for them to raise their families and support their families. Food, housing, education, healthcare. And that is one reason which we see all over the country, and more prominently in North, where you go to the middlemen, take money at a higher rate of interest for a wedding in the house, for a hospitalization, for education of your children. And one failed crop ensures that you are in perpetuity in debt for your life. Because they charge 18, 24, 30% interest, which is very, very high. And it's just not possible for the farmers to really support. And at some point of time, that stress gets into the family, and we see some adverse situations we've seen in the past. Having said that, I believe private sector can be a driver of moving the farmers from the basic wheat, rice, cropping pattern to high value crops. And many private sector initiatives did that. For example, my own Del Monte, we were into primary agriculture earlier. We just exited now, but we were doing baby corn, and the farmers' income went up by 7%. The fat content in the milk went up by 7%, because we told the dairy farmers to grow baby corn. Give me the baby corn and use the fodder. So that fodder increased the yield, that increased the fat content. So that was one part of income which came up. And the baby corn they sold to us was an additional income. So their income levels went up from 30 to 50%. So there are many such private initiatives. And this is where I believe the private sector can come in. Land is a big issue. And therefore, I think the lease of agricultural land on long tenure basis, making sure that the owner does not get alienated from the ownership and the tenant has no tenancy right, can clearly be a classic case where you can aggregate land, bring in modern technologies, use irrigation in the right, micro irrigation in the right perspective, and then make sure that not only you are increasing the productivity, you are also increasing the soil health, you are also looking at high value crops. And by the way, in the neighboring areas, we can be the exporters to the Middle East, to the ASEAN countries, where we can support them by supplying primary agriculture. Having said that, the second leg where private sector can come in is on the food processing. Because the primary agriculture, when you move, it needs the cold chain. And we have a very poor cold chain system in India. And that only will come up when you have modern retail on the front end, increasing significant on the fresh farm produce, which is a very, very limited portfolio today. And therefore, once you process, then the cold chain is not required, because you've done whatever you have done, and you package them into punnets or whatever the case may be, and then you can send this right up to UK and Europe, and they are covered with snow for 6 months in a year, and that is a good opportunity for India to export ready to cook or ready to eat meals, fresh vegetables, in a very, very hygiene way, tackled in a manner that it passes the phytosanitary regulatory requirements of the country where the exports are happening. So there is a large requirement of again the state governments and private sector to work together. We saw the FPOs coming up, farmer producer organizations. They've started to happen. I have seen some cases where there are mechanizations, business opportunities have come up where you lease the machines to the farmers, and they don't have to invest, because on a 2 acre you'll never buy a laser leveler or a high mulcher or a cutter or whatever the case may be. So these are the things which are happening, and I think more and more should come from the state governments in setting up machine centers which can lease to the farmers, and also make sure that the end result of this must be the farmer income, which needs to go up significantly.
No, and not only that, that will also drive, villages in India becoming self-propelling economic units. I think it will also ensure livelihood security, especially if private sector, comes in more into rural areas. We know Prime Minister always talks of urban. How do we take the combination of rural, urban India, and all of these points, will really take India where we need to be by India 100. I know we've run, I don't know, 40, 45
But Rajan, also, I must also say that this will also ensure employment in rural areas.
Absolutely.
So the pressure on the migration to urban areas will go down, and there will be better living conditions in the villages also.
Yeah. No, and I think that's the thing, right? When the value gets created and there's better efficiency and profitability at that village level, I think the self-sustainability of those ecosystems will also get driven. And I think, again, a very important area for us to, kind of focus on. As we are moving forward, I know, in 2007, when Sunil took over as president of CII, and we were celebrating India at 60, I still remember Rakesh, and I was just I chaired the Young Indians, and he said, you chair, this India at 75, it's young people, being driven. In your year, when you were president, 2018, I still remember our conversations around, your belief in young people, right? Even today, the number or the age young is actually getting lower. The Gen Zs, 25-year-old or Gen Alphas, and, you've been deeply invested in that community. What's your one message to the young people of India?
Well, I think, this goes without saying that today the demographic dividend which India sits on is a huge positive. And if we can tackle this, if we can handhold them properly, this would be a winning combination for India to be seen as a global leader. So that is the first thing which I can say. And therefore, first of all, our responsibility is that we must ensure good values, good education, and if I may say, a heart in the right place for the younger generations. Because that is something which is in the making. We have 300 plus million kids in schools, 6 to 16 years. 10 years from now, they're going to knocking at our doors for employment or higher education, whatever the case may be. So therefore, clearly, one, I believe that what we need to see is India to be a showcase, a global showcase, where we talk about equitable prosperity and development, which you mentioned, and this is Prime Minister Modi's Vasundhaiv Kutumbakam is something, one nation, one earth, one people. So this is a message which enriches India. which enriches our hearts. And therefore, every young boy and girl needs to take ownership and be an ambassador of India. Carry the message of oneness. Be proud of that. I think that is the first message which I would like to make. The second is our foundation, India's foundation, has been laid by the teachings of, if I may say, the sages, the Vedas, and whatnot. And today we are, in the modern world. But let us not forget our rich culture, rich heritage, and the rich past. And that must continue, because that, I believe, makes us humble. Because there is a tipping point, and you see this today. Even in India, I keep on seeing. The moment you are wealthy, you tip on to being arrogant. Why we need to be humble, and these are the teachings which have kept us the way we are today, and this is something which we need to carry forward. I always quote this: the best exercise for the heart is to bend down and lift someone up. That is something which is ingrained in our DNAs. That is something we need to keep in mind. I keep telling my younger students, whoever I meet, whether they are part of my Satya Bharti schools or other places wherever I go and meet, that you need to really have a heart to understand that there is other India sitting on the other side of the line. And can we integrate these students whose parents can afford to take them to the best of schools and best of colleges to be seen with the other side, to spend some time over there? For example, I do that. Our children, I have a school in Ludhiana, Sir Paul Mittal School. The kids go into my Satya Bharti school. And every time they have gone, they've come back and thanked their teachers that this is something which is a great learning for us. Similarly, when we look around our societies and communities, and as I mentioned earlier, if we start from within our homes to start supporting our domestic staff kids, we are making a difference. The other point is, every time you go and interact with the youth, I can tell you in my case, I come back energized. And that is one reason why I always look young and look happy, because I interact with the younger generation. And I learn so much from them every time. So learning is part of our life's journey. And it only ends when you have left the world. Otherwise, you can keep learning every day. And I can give you a small quote. I went into one of my village school. I walk into a class, and the teacher is teaching, and I asked him, I said, how is it going? And so he says, everything is fine. I said, what's your impression? He was with us for about a month and a half. We are teaching these kids who come from very disadvantaged backgrounds. So what is your take? I mean, what have you picked up in a sense of your interactions? He said, if I can be honest with you, I didn't want to join Satya Bharti School when I was given the opportunity. For the simple reason that the kind of kids we are talking of, I mean, who's going to teach them? It will be very difficult. He says, in the last 1.5 months, I have learned every day teaching in this school. So a teacher learns from these kids who probably would have never gone to school. So therefore, learning is part of our journey, and that needs to be kept in our mind agile all the time. And the third is, how can we support each other? How can we support our families? How can we just not limit ourselves to my needs and my family needs, but look at the need of community societies around, look at need of India as a nation, look at the needs of the way I can contribute, where India can sit on the high table of policymaking. I think for far too long, India has been a follower of policymaking at the global stage. I mean, if you see the non-aligned movement or the Punch Heel were earlier. Today, we see many things. International Solar Alliance is something which Prime Minister Modi's passion, and he sort of pushed that agenda. Today, we see many things happening on the climate side, climate action. So can India be sitting on the high table of policy making to ensure that the world is integrated into one? The borders may be there, but in our minds there should be no borders. Can we share our learnings with each other? Can we share our best practices with each other to ensure that this world becomes a better place to live in?
Yeah, no, I think all these points and messages to the young people are so critical. And the one point that you really talked about, the heart. I always believe that when we look at the world, especially the Western world, and we see leadership and we see people excelling, they say you need a clear thinking head, clean working hands. I think adding a warm, caring heart to that will really define Indianness. And what
Yes.
India can bring to the world, very differently. And bending, I think in the Vasudev Kutumbakam, Rakesh, what you say, if you look at nature, even you see a tree, right? It ultimately bends. It's regal 200, 300 years and provides a shade for others to grow within it. So I think this entire aspect of achieving success, being humble, having a warm, caring heart, taking other people along, like what you rightly said, can be a very strong Indianness that we need to take out to the world. And hopefully 25 years down the road, that will be the way the world will be. And that would probably be India's largest contribution more than anything else. And I know we all dream of such things. And my last question to you, Rakesh, is, like if you're in a dream, right? You got to bed, you're dreaming about India at 100, right? What's that dream? I know we've covered so many aspects, but something that's personal. If you were to envision India, you were to see that as a dream today, because that's really we want to stretch aspirations, and we know, we'll only have to innovate through limited resources to get there. But what's that dream that you see for India? And with that, we will kind of bring this conversation to a close.
Well, I would say I dream of an India in 2047 as being seen as a global power, which provides very, very strong ethics and strong leadership. I would like to see India in 2047, which is high on technological developments, innovation, and showing the world, the products and services which can be delivered, but at a affordable price. I think that is one thing which India has done very effective. Even when we look at the Mars mission, I mean, 700 crores. I was at ISRO when the OneWeb launch happened. Our own, 36 satellites went up. I mean, it was a dream to see what they did that day, what they have done over there. So clearly, there is a lot of enterprise. There is a lot of innovative scientific mind sitting in India. And this is the time when we need to start providing them opportunity in India for them to make sure that they be here, not be somewhere else, and contributing to the goodness of mankind. And I would like to see India, which should be a happy India. Every citizen in 2047 can be put a smile on their face with no worry on basic necessities. And can we enable a strong India, every citizen who is capable of contributing her own might, ideas, if I may say, businesses, professional thing. And as I keep hearing, why should one be looking at getting educated and find a job? Why can't you be job givers? And there is going to be a lot of opportunity. Today, India is the calling card. If you see the globe, the economic growth is very, very, subdued. India, 6.5%, 7% this year will again be the bright spot. And so clearly there's a big opportunity. And therefore, I would say, when we talk of wealth, when we talk of achievements, I think happiness index of India needs to be amongst the best. And that would be a great, great contribution from all of us. I don't know whether we will be living in 2047 or not, but at least our future generations can say and thank the current generation and the past generations of having brought a place or a country like India where they can live happily as one family, and also look at India being the global power, which it has the right to be. I think we will come full circle. I mean, when you see 1920s, India and China were 52% of the economies in the world. I mean, everyone was way behind us, and therefore this is something which will be good. In fact, I am reminded of Kishore Mahbubani. He sent me an article yesterday, and he says, "Gone are the time when there used to be unipolar India, a unipolar world." Although he says that it was never unipolar, it was bipolar. It was US Russia, and now it is US China. But the world is now expecting to to see a country who can be the third pole, independent without any alignment, contributing to making sure that the world is a better place. And I think India is in a sweet spot and has the opportunity to be that one big country.
No, I think very powerful way to close this session, and rooted that super India or superpower India, or the one that is giving direction to the world, rooted in happiness, with capacity in its people, at its optimal level. Because I think only happy people can make others happy, and I think that's the infectious energy that India can carry out to the world. I think, Rakesh, has been such a lovely conversation, right from technical conversations to manufacturing, education, to really ending it on a conversation that is really bringing out the best of each person in India. Really, thank you so much for such an insightful, engaging conversation. We've been 60 minutes at it. It didn't even feel like that. And I'm sure there are so many gems. There's so many gems in this conversation, that can benefit India on the journey forward to India 2047. So again, thank you so much, Rakesh, for making the time.
Rajan, my compliments to you again. I assume that this was first in the series, and you're going to have lot many.
Yes, we are doing a few. Yes.
So I would say at the end, when you close in August, I think you should put all this together and then share it with the larger audience.
Sure.
And I think this will be a good input. As a matter of fact, this should be run in the outcome of this could be part of school curriculum.
Sure.
Because that is where when we talk of values, this is something the students need to know, the strengths of India today and how we are looking at 25 years from now.
No, I think what you say is so true, because that inspiration is what children need at the right point in their education journeys. Because most stories, when you hear of successful people, someone going to the moon or aspiring, you always hear that there's some episode in their childhood that triggered that curiosity for them to do that. And thank you for that input. And we'll definitely see how CII and others can really take this out at mass over the next few years. Thanks. Thank you, Rakesh.
Thank you. Bye.